What's new from Apple? There's the new iPhone 16 Pro, built for Apple Intelligence. And it comes with the all-new camera control, giving you an easier way to quickly access your camera tools. The new Apple Watch Series 10 has our biggest display and our thinnest design ever. And this? It's the sound of active noise cancellation, now available on one of 2 new AirPods 4 models. So quiet. Check out all of the new products and new features at apple.com. You can even buy yourself something new. See apple.com for product availability updates. Apple Intelligence coming this fall.
Your teen requested a ride, but this time not from you. It's through their Uber teen account. You drive your teenager around, a lot, to their friend Jacob's house, their other friend Jake's house, to James's, to Jaden's, to Jalen's, to...
Mom? This is Jake's house, not Jacob's.
Now with an Uber teen account, your teen can request a ride under your supervision. They'll ride with a highly rated driver, and with live trip tracking, you'll follow along the whole ride to their friends' houses that all sound the same. Add your teen to your Uber account today. See app for details.
Bye, Mom.
Thanks for listening to the Red Treehouse, where I tell scary stories to keep you up at night. You can listen to the Red Treehouse on your favorite streaming platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Be sure to follow, like, and subscribe. Oh, and leave a 5-star review. You can follow the Red Treehouse on social media, on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, X, Threads, and Facebook at Red Treehouse Pod. And now you can find the Red Treehouse on Patreon. Join the Red Treehouse community for as little as $3 per month and receive exclusive member benefits, including personal shoutouts, early access to episodes, bonus episodes, and more. Simply go to patreon.com/Red Treehouse. As always, if you have a scary story or topic you'd like me to feature on an upcoming episode, email redtreehousepod@gmail.com. Important note, sources for this episode can be found in the show notes. The Red Treehouse is dedicated to my dad. I love you, Pop. According to a National Association of Realtors survey conducted in 2021, 83% of Americans say they've experienced paranormal or supernatural activity in their home. That's 5 out of every 6 people. For context, that's nearly 278 million people across the United States. The most common experience is hearing strange noises, lights turning on or off by themselves, hearing ghostly voices, and more. What's fascinating is paranormal activity is not limited to one's home. In fact, a significant number of Americans have also experienced strange occurrences outside of their home, in the woods, driving on the road, in public, and more. I'll admit, I have a few scary stories of my own. But more than anything, I love hearing other people's scary stories. Maybe it's the commiseration that what I went through wasn't just my overactive imagination. Or maybe it's the fact that I'm not the only one who has experienced scary things. Either way, it's one of my favorite conversations to have. In this episode of the Red Treehouse, we're going to hear 3 scary stories from 3 Red Treehouse listeners. They're shared in no particular order, but trust me, they're all worth it. As you listen, consider these questions. What scary experiences have you had? What has given you the creepy feeling that you aren't alone? And is it possible that there was more than the rational mind can simply explain away? I'll share the stories. You decide for yourself. I'm your host, Will. Welcome to the Red Treehouse. Our first story comes from Red Treehouse listener Brenna Cox. Quote, "This was a Petro 2 truck stop that is no longer being used. I can no longer find it online anymore. It was originally just as you entered from the bottom of Pennsylvania and was a converted hotel turned into a Petro 2 truck stop. From what I discovered from research afterwards, it was owned by a veteran for about 30 years, who later converted it. The building was an old hotel from the 1950s. My ex-husband and I were long-haul truck drivers, being on the road and living on the road. We had stopped at truck stops all the time for overnights to sleep and shower. One night, we decided to push it past our normal spot and go for this truck stop since it got us into Pennsylvania. By the time we rolled in, it was around 7 p.m. The sun had set, and it was dark. The parking lot was fairly full, and the place was busy. Gathering our stuff to go into the shower, we both walked towards the odd place. The building was very dark in color, and it was not a regular style truck stop. Instead, it was an old style hotel that was converted into a truck stop. The windows had outdated red curtains that could be seen as you walked up to the front doors. The restaurant was called a Cast Iron Skillet. Going up a few stairs, we were greeted with 2 glass doors before entering what was the most bizarre and scary encounter I have ever had. Walking into this place was like the scene out of a dingy 1980s movie. The air was thick, and it felt like walking through a jelly wall. The pressure made you feel uncomfortable. Everyone seemed to be drained and sluggish. My ex and I liked to make people laugh. It was something we enjoyed doing. We could hear a lot of noise coming from the restaurant, clinking of glasses, knives and forks, and laughter. So, we approached the counter. There was no one there, so we rang a bell that was sitting on the countertop. It took the man a good amount of time to get to us. He was sluggish and slow. He asked what we needed, with near annoyance. My ex and I cracked jokes to get a smile out of him, and that normally worked. But this man was cold and unyielding. He turned around to get our towels and the key to the shower, when my ex and I looked at each other in mutual understanding that this guy was acting weird. Plunking the towels and key down, he pointed to the showers up to the stairs and mentioned someone would be waiting for us there. We said thanks and left to go up. The stairs were a wide set that led straight up and overlooked the shop below. I stopped halfway because my stomach was doing flip-flops. I knew the energy in here was way off, as I am sensitive to these things. I stopped my ex and said, "Can't you feel it? The energy is just wrong." He told me to knock it off, and we kept going. When we got to the top of the stairs, the strangest man was standing there. He stood across from the door to our shower. He was tall, lanky, and pale. He pointed to the door of our shower and said, "Don't worry about the faucet being faulty," and helped us get in. Indeed, it was. Then we heard gushing water. The door opened, and steam billowed out. The faucet was a sensor faucet, and was running full-blown, non-stop, on hot. It fogged the mirror up entirely, and continued as we entered. Dropping our stuff off, I bopped the faucet head with my hand. Oddly enough, it shut off. My ex said, must be a faulty sensor. But I did not feel the same way. I was very much aware this place was not normal, and I felt off. My ex was the first person to enter the shower. I stayed back. The towels were next to the sink on the extended counter space. Before I hopped into the shower, I reached for the face cloth. Then, the faucet turned back on, and I jumped back. I entered the shower. My ex tried to be playful. I said no, telling him what happened, and him finally taking me seriously. He quickly washed up and got out as I was left to finish. We both were having a hot shower. Steam was coming out. My ex was getting dressed, and as he pulled up his boxers, I heard him say, "God, it's cold." I pulled the curtain back and looked out. He pulled his arms in to protect his chest, and goosebumps covered his whole body. I could see his breath. He saw it too. Quickly after he noticed the faucet came back on, spraying full blast. He said to me, "Brenna, hurry up." I barely got rinsed off, and as I got out to towel off, I saw my ex underneath the sink, turning off the main water valves. The water slowly turned off, and he said, "That'll stop you." Thinking we had stopped the spook, I took my time getting dressed and was looking for different things that could explain what was going on. I had just finished getting dressed, pulling my shirt over my head, when the faucet turned on full blast. I almost jumped across the bathroom. We grabbed all our things and ran quickly out of the bathroom. We took nothing from there and left nothing behind. We ran out of the front door. Sadly, one of us still had to drop off the bathroom key. My ex lost the argument and went back in. That night, trying to sleep, all I could hear were scratches from outside the truck. I was woken up often by something running their nails along the side of the truck, making a horrible metal-to-nail sound. We left in the rising sun when our hours were reset, and we never went back again. In the daylight, we noticed we were one of the last trucks to leave, and just how badly the place was run down. End quote. Our second story comes from Red Treehouse listener Kimberly Mansfield. She's an author and paranormal investigator. You can follow her on Threads at @lavendercalligraphy_. And you can find her book, Trials of the Serpent, on Amazon and Kindle Unlimited. It was 10:30 p.m., and we were outside in the warm night. I looked up at the stars, raising my camera to get photos of the northern lights, which were invisible to the naked eye. The first few turned out beautiful, so I continued to take pictures, seeing which color appeared next. There wasn't much light pollution, living in front of a vast, mountainous desert. A beautiful place, ancient rock formations, and petroglyphs close by. Then, things turned, taking me from my current venture of photographing the lights in a tapestry full of stars. I suddenly looked at the neighbor's fence watching it. I wondered why I suddenly felt a need to look there, but the answer soon became clear. I heard what sounded like a dog howl coming from the corner of my neighbor's yard, up on a hill behind a 6-foot fence. It was strange sounding, as if someone was pretending to sound like a dog. It couldn't be my buddy Sterling, who I visit regularly from my side of the fence at the corner. I often meet him there to tell him he's a good boy, in a silly voice, just to get his tail wagging. But something felt immediately wrong. The sound was nothing like his bark, and he never howled. It was high-pitched at first, like a coyote, but rapidly descended octaves, faster than any dog I've ever heard. In addition, he was never outside that late. I ran inside, easily, since I had left the door open just a crack. That's when things became terrifying. Despite the door being open, my husband and mother-in-law heard nothing. Was something trying to lead me to the corner, an area I trusted, mimicking an animal that I met there? Even stranger is we can hear dogs from inside the house, whether they are domesticated or wild. I contacted my Native American friend the next morning, trying to find answers. Were any animals acting strange or defensive, she asked. The animals that frequent the area were absent. No chirps of nocturnal fowl. Silence from the frogs in the pond next door. She said that perhaps it was a skinwalker, able to mimic animals like dogs. It, of course, could have been other animals as well. But with the nature of the events that occurred and the strangeness of the variables, I am convinced that what I experienced was spiritual, paranormal, and not natural to this world. Perhaps I should invest in an animal identification device, or app, in the event it's heard again. But I sincerely hope it's not, as deep down, I have a feeling it was a monster. End quote. Our final story is a special one. It comes from my dad, who a few months before his passing this past February shared an interesting and terrifying story from his childhood. My dad loved the Red Treehouse, and I'm honored to share this with you. Quote, back when I was a kid, we lived in a small apartment in Brooklyn, New York, where most apartments now have a square floor plan. Back then, they were mostly long, going from front to back. Understanding the layout of the apartment is important, as it'll help you visualize the story. When you walk through the front door, you'd be standing in the dining room, facing the kitchen, with the living room behind you. Through the kitchen was a small hallway, with a bathroom on the right and bedrooms in the back, side by side. Over the course of a few nights, I was visiting with my great-grandmother. Each night, I don't remember the time, I'd get up from bed to use the bathroom. As I walked out of my bedroom, which was on the left side of the hallway, I'd cross the hallway and pass the bedroom to the right. I could hear my great-grandmother watching television in the living room, and the light cast an eerie glow in the otherwise dark apartment. Coupled with a burning candle in the bathroom, it was pretty terrifying, even if the bathroom was less than 15 feet from my bed. Each time I walked to the bathroom, I'd instinctively turn left to look into the other bedroom, hoping the door was closed and I wouldn't be able to see into the dark room. This time, the door was open. As my eyes adjusted to the dim lighting, I noticed the bed in the middle of the room. And though my great-grandmother was in the living room, there was a lump in the bed. The first night I didn't think too much about it and assumed they were bed covers that weren't made or pillows that were tucked under the blanket. I went to the bathroom and walked back to my room, taking a quick glance at the bed in the other room. The lump was still there. When I noticed it again the second night, I knew for sure something was off. I'd watched my great-grandmother make the bed that morning, and she hadn't taken a nap or gone into the room at all that day. Like the night before, I walked past the room and noticed the lump under the bed covers. This time, instead of walking back to my room after using the bathroom, I ran to the living room where my great-grandmother was sitting, watching television. "There's something in your bed," I told her. "There's no one there. Go back to sleep," she responded. And just like that, I walked through the kitchen and back to my room and glanced at the bed in the middle of the other room. The lump was gone. I had trouble falling asleep that night, and I don't know exactly when it hit me, but the more I thought about my great-grandmother's response, the more scared I became. "There's no one there. Go back to sleep." Except I hadn't told her there was someone in her bed. I told her there was something in her bed. There's no way her response was a mistake. The next night, like clockwork, I got up to use the bathroom. As I walked out of my room, I glanced at the other room, terrified that I'd catch a glimpse of the someone my great-grandmother referenced the night before. Except this time, the door was closed. I took a deep sigh of relief and went to the bathroom. As I walked out to go back to my room, I stopped dead in my tracks. The bedroom door was wide open, and on the bed was the same lump as the 2 previous nights. I ran straight to my great-grandmother, who was in the kitchen making farina, think cream of wheat. Scared, I tried to explain to her what I'd seen the past 3 nights, while also asking her to tell me what was going on. Without saying anything, she stepped away from the stove, just far enough to peek into the bedroom. "Don't look over there. It's your great-grandfather," she said. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears. My great-grandfather died some time before I saw him lying in bed those 3 nights. End quote. I'll admit, these stories leave me unsettled in my thoughts. I'm not sure what's worse, the terror that you can see, or the one that is hidden just out of sight and reach. Strange noises and voices legitimately scare me. But so too does the possibility of seeing something ghostly in the dark corner of a room. And while it's possible that many of these experiences may have a rational explanation, there are others that don't. And I've said it before, there's just too much weird stuff out there to dismiss offhand without a second thought. A huge thank you to each listener for submitting these stories. And a special shout out to my dad for telling me this story more than 6 months ago. There are a few more of his stories I'll tell in upcoming episodes, each one scarier than the last. It's been almost 4 months since he's been gone, and not a day goes by where I don't think about or miss him. As we close this episode of the Red Treehouse, we're left with these lingering questions. What scary experiences have you had? What has given you the creepy feeling that you're not alone? And is it possible that there was more than the rational mind can simply explain away? I've shared the stories. Now you decide for yourself. I'm your host, Will. Thanks for joining me in the Red Treehouse.